God cares so much more about my soul than he does my ministry.
Yeah.
And he cares so much more about his kingdom than he does my ego, that if I refuse to be sanctified the easy way, he'll have me sanctified the hard way. And so he and I have had a lot of conversations about that. And I was, please, God, deal with this in our closet. I don't want to be embarrassed here. And kind of the way that I've seen that he deals with me is he corrects me with the least possible damage. And so if I get a stiff neck, it can be very embarrassing. Open rebuke is better than secret love. If he has to openly rebuke me, he'll do it. But if I'll follow the leading of the Spirit, if I'll let people in and actually be accountable and talk to people and have people say, I'm not sure about that. And not say, well, what do you know? I'm at the head of the multi-level hierarchical pyramid. What are you talking about? If I'll actually allow people to speak that have credible voices. I'm sensitive to what Pastor Shock said. We walk by faith, not feedback. I understand we can't always be taking an opinion poll and leading by that. But accountability and eldership is not an opinion poll. These are trusted voices that are helping us to hit the target more times than not. So I want to make it really easy on those guys. I had this is a story from my practice I think is worth meditating on. This was early on in my career. I didn't have as much experience. I think I was actually still a resident. But I opened the door, and there was this lady that I was seeing probably every 6 weeks. I opened the door, and I said, I'm going to call her Nancy. It's not her name. Nancy, what's the matter with you? You've lost weight. You don't look good. And we got a scan, and she actually had lung cancer. But I didn't need the scan. And she didn't look, it was subtle. She maybe lost 5-8 pounds. It was subtle. But because I saw her so often, when I opened the door, I diagnosed her from 20 feet away or 8 feet away. Because an experienced clinician with proximity to the patient can make a diagnosis. They've actually done studies on pediatric patients, and you can do all the lab tests and the spinal taps and everything. But a kid with a fever, if they've got sepsis or blood poisoning, an experienced pediatrician is as good as your test from 8 feet across the room because they can tell when a child is sick. I think that's true in spiritual leadership and eldership. If people are experienced with the Lord, they've walked with the Lord a while, and you allow them to have proximity to you, then the Spirit will help them to know, and they can recognize when, you're working too much, you need to rest. When's the last time you and your wife been out of town? What's your kids like? What's going on? How's the church? How are you feeling? What's your prayer life like? Those can be uncomfortable questions, but I'd sure rather answer them to my friends than to my enemies.
Yeah, no doubt.
And if all of those things are leading indicators that are going to affect the people I love the most, my family, fellow Christians in our church, people in my practice, associates, employees, if it's going to affect them, then why not be my best? This is where your leadership blueprint books, the rhythms of your life and, keeping the right things right in order that you can be who you need to be. At the end of the day, it's still treasures in earthen vessels. We're still, we're not the gold. He's the gold. But we can mess it up. I mean, you can.
We can.
Yeah,
let me ask you this. You're tapping all around the subject of character as you're saying this story and then these other things. And that's a major theme in your book, which I love, by the way. It's a major theme in my book as well. And you argue in your book that leadership effectiveness isn't about the gift itself. It's about the integrity of the person that's presenting it, the character. I'm curious, are there any major red flags that you would say that a leader is, that would tell us that a leader is relying on gifts instead of their character? I don't mean tell us, but tell how can I put the spotlight on my life and my character?
Integrity is not just moral excellence, it's moral consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard integrity defined as the same values expressed through every relationship. So my love for you will look radically different than my love for my wife. But the principles of self-giving interest and interest in your betterment and your flourishing and your thriving, that should be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you and my wife were to talk, neither one of you should be shocked about what you've heard or experienced in our relationship. Even though you and I don't know each other very well, she and I know each other very well. You know, you are a leader colleague. You know, she and I have diaper duty with kids, you know, that we share. So it's a radically different relationship, but there should be the same values expressed. So I think that if we want to look at ourselves,
consistency
is key. That's a big deal.
That is big.
Do I feel radically different in different environments? And one of the things that's been very encouraging for me as I've gone through life is that I remember in med school one time there's a guy who was dealing with a certain illness, and he asked me a question about his religious experience. And I actually took off my clinical jacket and I said, I'm going to talk to you as a person, not as a medical student, because I felt like I needed to divest myself of that professional role in order to be honest with you spiritually. I never had to do that anymore because I feel like my roles are much more integrated. And what I do on Sunday and what I do on Monday feel like the same thing. They feel like one is physical ministry, one is spiritual, but they blend and bleed in so much that you know, we've actually had two people to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit in the clinic. So it's kind of, wow. And then I got people asking about their blood pressure at church. So my environment, apparently I'm not a very good boundary setter. You know, just kind of the Spirit leaks out everywhere.
You're consistent.
Yeah. Well, but that's kind of my point. And not that I'm not bringing that up to say I've mastered integrity. I'm bringing it up to say, if we allow the Spirit to work on us, He'll show us how He works through us in different environments, different relationships.
That's so true.
And there is a common thread. You know, I'm really, really convinced that the Jesus of 12 who wowed the doctors, and the Jesus who went to the wedding party, and the Jesus who rode in the dirt with the lady who was taken in adultery, and the Jesus who made the fish at the fire, I'm absolutely 100% convinced it was the same Jesus. Yeah. And that people experienced the same principles coming out of Him. Their reactions were different because their motivations were different. But I think in various environments, Jesus expressed those principles. You know, I'm here to do my Father's works. I'm here to say my Father's words. I'm here to build the kingdom. I think that was pretty clear and pretty consistent out of Jesus. I think it's one of the things that makes Him the greatest leader of eternity in all time. So, you know, we can stretch for that. We can reach for that. As far as other people and looking for that, I tell the folks at our place, the thing that I value most for you as a team member and a leader is humility. If you have humility, the Lord and I and others and books and whatever, you know, any skill can be taught, anything can be worked on. But if you don't have humility, we don't have a platform to work for it from, because you're going to bow up at everything we say or everything. You know, I can't buy enough books to help you with communication if you don't have humility.